Well, welcome everybody. It's great to see all of you here. Next month is going to be Member Appreciation Month at the League, the month of February. And I think I'm about to get in trouble with our membership department because I'm going to start appreciating you today, 1 week early. But we may have to take it off the end of the month, so you might not get all of February. But seriously, I do want to extend my appreciation to you, in part because I know how hard all of you work to lead your orchestras, and I know that it is hard work to do. And the time I spend with your groups and speaking with you on the phone, I'm always amazed at the challenges you face and how steadfastly you rise to them. And it's terrific, too, that you come together like this because it's a great way to enjoy and benefit from the support of all of your colleagues. And finally, I'm very grateful and appreciative for the support that many of you give the League. In fact, 46 of you support the League. And we're really grateful for all of that support, and we know that the rest of you will be supporting us soon, too. So anyway, before we get to the main event, I want to give you a few updates from the League and also introduce some new friends and some old friends. So, starting with our sponsors, joining us for the first time this year is Triplet Music Products, who've been generously sponsored this session this afternoon. Triplet excels in lighting music on music stands, uprights, and grand pianos. They are represented here today by CEO Jack McGowan, CFO Mary Sharkey, and CPA Brian Radburn. Are you in the room, folks?
Hey.
Thank you. If you haven't seen these lights yet, you got to check them out. They're really amazing. They're really bright. The reception this afternoon is again sponsored by our good friends at the Corporation for International Business, who of course you know specialize in ATA carnets and customs duty guarantees for orchestras traveling internationally. And CIB is represented here today by their president and CEO, Kurt Wilson, and team manager for customer service and sales representative, Jackie Daglish. Jackie and Kurt, can we ask you to stand? Thank you. Great. And we're happy once again to be joined today by our friend and colleague Richard Talaski, President and Principal Acoustician for Talaski, who continues to generously sponsor the name badges at all League events. Richard, can we recognize you? And tomorrow morning's coffee, essential, has been sponsored this year by Colbert Artist Management, and Colbert artists represent classical, instrumental, and vocal soloists and conductors. And Colbert's represented here today by Vice President Christina Putnam and Senior Manager Lee Prince. Chris and Lee, are you here?
We are here.
Hey, thank you. So if you haven't had a chance to see these good folks yet, please find them. They'll be with us in the reception this afternoon and in the lobby also. Oh, there we go. Okay. So next, I want to welcome and introduce you to the first class of our Emerging Leaders program. Many of you in this room helped give shape and focus to this next iteration of the Orchestra Management Fellowship Program, our signature effort to develop leadership talent for our orchestras. Thank you for your invaluable input. As I call each of your names, I'd like to ask you to stand. And folks, if you can hold your applause till we have everyone up. First, Caleb Bailey, Orchestra Manager of Lincoln Symphony Orchestra. Jennifer Barton, Individual Giving Manager, Jacksonville Symphony Orchestra. Nicholas Cohen, Director of Community Engagement, Baltimore Symphony Orchestra. Bradley Evans, Assistant Orchestra Personnel Manager, San Francisco Symphony. Yujin Hong, Director of Civic Orchestra and Training Program, Chicago Symphony Orchestra, and Michael Reichman, General Manager, Symphony Nova, and Rebecca Zabinski, Artistic Associate, Houston Symphony. Welcome. So now I'd like to ask everyone in the room who is an alum of the Orchestra Management Fellowship Program to please stand up. And let's now add everyone who has been in an orchestra that's had a fellow or has hosted an intern. And you can just stay standing, and now let's just add everyone who believes that developing leadership talent in American orchestras is a high priority. Stand up. So to our inaugural class of the Emerging Leadership Program, if you look around this room, you see your friends and colleagues that are all committed to your success and to the success of all of the people seeking to develop their talents in our field. So on behalf of everyone in the room, we wish you great success and look forward to getting to know you over the next 2 years. We also have some new faces at the League I'd like you to get to know. Our new Vice President for Development, Stacy Margulies, who joined us in September. Stacy, can you stand up? And I'd like to ask all the League staff who's worked very hard on this weekend will be with you over the next couple of days. So if I can ask all League staffers to rise so we can thank you. I think everyone knows that this year's conference will mark, among other things, the end of an extraordinary 14-year tenure for Polly Kahn. And Polly has asked that we not have a series of endless, continuous goodbyes, so I promise to keep this brief. But I don't want the moment to go by without us taking a moment to recognize her for the extraordinary work that she has done and the unbelievable input she's given to our field and to the League. And if ever there was a person we might refer to as America's orchestra's teacher, that would be Polly. So Polly, if you would just stand so we can recognize you. I am pleased to report that the League completed its 13th consecutive year with a balanced budget. Many of you helped. Thank you. 2013 was also the year in which we took some of the medicine we've been heaping out to you. And that is to say, we turned our attention to our own capital structure. This past year, we have nearly doubled our cash reserves to just under $1 million, and that's on a $6 million budget, so we still have a ways to go. But we also launched a Change Capital Fund, a board-designated fund for new initiatives of $300,000. As our treasurer likes to say, we're building a fortified balance sheet. As many of you know, Lowell Notaboom will step down as chair this coming June, completing a remarkable 7 years. Through his leadership, the League has completed a transformative strategic plan, completed a $25 million campaign to support the plan's implementation, established a robust body of services for orchestra trustees, and through his tireless efforts, he consulted with dozens and probably hundreds of orchestra boards and their leaders, spreading the gospel of good governance. Lowell is here this afternoon, and Lowell, let us show our appreciation to you. I'm very pleased, to let you know that Patricia Richards has just been elected as our new chair for a one-year term to succeed Lowell beginning this June. Pat has been the League's vice chair and chair of our development committee for the past 5 years. She's also chair of the Utah Symphony and Opera. Last year, Pat received the 2013 National Opera Trustee Recognition Award for Outstanding Trustees of U.S. opera companies for exemplary leadership, generosity, and audience-building efforts on behalf of their respective opera companies. I think she developed all of those skills on the Utah Symphony side of her role. I just know that. Anyhow, we're very happy that Pat is coming on board as our chair. Last year at this session, we talked about diversity and inclusion, and the subject continues to be a high priority item for us at the League, as I know it is for all of you. Just one of the results of this renewed commitment has been the formation of a League-facilitated work group devoted to advancing diversity best practices. The work group is moderated by Jim Hirsch, Executive Director of the Chicago Sinfonietta, and meets in monthly conference calls. There are 27 participants from 17 different organizations. I sat in on the most recent call addressing what was the case for diversity. I was struck by the clarity and conviction with which nearly every member delivered two very powerful ideas. Achieving diversity and inclusion is a moral imperative, and it is also a matter of survival. This is a terrific group, and if you're interested in joining, please see Jessica Balboni or Jim Hirsch. I also want to mention a project that we've begun, and it's the work of building a template for an annual longitudinal report capturing important financial and operating trends of orchestras derived from the orchestra statistical reports and Form 990s. Heather and Stephen will join each of your meetings tomorrow to provide some more details. But I'll just say here that this will provide essential insights into understanding our industry better. And we're looking forward to working with you as we take this project to its next phase and develop an effective communication strategy. I think most of you know that last year, the Electronic Media Association was organized to negotiate a new agreement with the AFM, and as such, that is now the negotiating arm representing our orchestras. And Joe Kluger and Michael Bronson have been retained by the EMA to support its efforts. And because of the direct role that Joe and Michael are now playing in collective bargaining, the League will no longer be able to provide counsel or strategic advice through them. The service, however, will now be available through the Electronic Media Association. And during your meetings tomorrow, Paul Meacham, Jim Ward, and J.L. Nave won't be giving reports on the negotiations, which are actually going on concurrent to this meeting, but will encourage managers to join the EMA to be included in the information flow. With your help, Congress was convinced this month to preserve funding for the NEA and arts education, even as other areas of federal spending were cut. They were restored to their pre-sequester levels of $146 million for the NEA and $25 million for arts education in the U.S. Department of Education. But there are many more challenges ahead. In just 2 days, the President's State of the Union address is expected to frame income inequality as the issue of our time. As Congress considers tax reform and other funding priorities in the lens of serving those most in need, we'll be partnering with you to make the case for the importance of the arts in the lives of all of our nation's citizens. I think we probably would all agree that at the very least, the systems and routines for running orchestras that were developed in the last quarter of the last century probably don't flex so well to meet today's realities. And I know that each of you in your own ways are involved in doing the very tough and important work of helping your organizations adapt through changes in values and priorities and practices. And as I listen to your meetings, I know how taxing and hard this work can be, and also how confusing and sometimes chaotic our field may look. But there are a couple of things that I think are worth noticing and pointing out. And one of them is a terrific pathway, and it has to do with your own collaboration with one another. The 7 orchestra consortium testing new concert formats, the Orchestra Unwound Consortium, the dozens of members in the small budget orchestra commissioning program, the 9 orchestras that came together for the Audience Growth Initiative and the Patron Growth Initiative. Collaboration is an innovation that I think you can all claim as a feature of orchestras today that accelerates and spreads new understanding and practice. You also collaborate by coming here with your colleagues, and some of the consortia I mentioned above were hatched at these very meetings. But of course, talking to each other has its limits too. And that's why we've opened up another pathway, listening to those voices not in orchestras, the voices that amplify and challenge our perspective, and ultimately lead to better understanding and more effective action.